2 weeks ago, I was listening to Moody Radio and I heard a speaker. Unfortunately, I did not get his name or the title of the book, but he had written a book about what it means to lament and the process of lamenting and how to do that the right way. And so I hurriedly got out my phone and took notes on the points that he brought out about the right way to lament. And I thought, that might be something I want to use in a lesson down the road. But I have thought and thought about that so much. And then, as fate would have it, this past week, um, if you were on here a minute ago, you heard me talk about my mother-in-law falling. It's Ernie's stepmom. She fell Monday morning and had a golf ball size knot on her forehead and broke her right hip. And so my whole week that I had planned to do um, things kind of just for me went off the rail. I wasn't supposed to have any meetings that week. I had all kinds of things planned that I wanted to do, and I didn't get to do any of that. And so I found myself in a situation where I was just kind of um, sad for her and sad for myself because um, I wasn't getting to do anything I wanted to do. And while I felt selfish and guilty for feeling that way, I couldn't help it. I still did. I'd wanted to spend time with my granddaughter and um, clean out this craft room that's getting overwhelming for me. And none of that happened. So these points that I had heard kept coming to my mind. So when we think about lamenting, what does it mean? What does the word lament mean? And as a noun, it's a passionate expression of grief or sorrow. So it can actually be a thing, or it could be a verb, an action of mourning, such as mourning a person's loss or death. And I thought about loss. When we think of lamenting, I think death comes to our mind when we think about mourning. But there are so many things that we mourn. We mourn relationships. We mourn maybe the loss of a job, something that we thought would happen and didn't, or something that we look forward to and then it doesn't happen. I thought about young ladies who want to be a mother and they're never able to conceive. And I thought about divorce. And I thought about um, during COVID, all of the things that changed and all of the ways um, our jobs changed, and just losing what we knew and what was familiar. So all of those things came to my mind. And then I found this biblical definition. What is lament? A lament is a prayer expressing sorrow, pain, or confusion. Lament should be the chief way Christians process grief in God's presence, because many Christians have grown up in churches which always look on the bright side, and lament can be jarring. So when we think as a Christian that our life is going to be easy and things are going to go well, um, you know, God is good and all things are going to be good and all things are going to be um, warm and fuzzy. This thought of lament can be jarring. Um, and so these are some quotes I found in one of the articles I read, that laments turn toward God when sorrow tempts you to run from him. So we had that lesson several weeks ago about, I think it was right after my brother passed away in November. So it was probably November or December we had this lesson when, something, suffering can draw us closer to God, or it can be a wedge that pulls us further away. And so I think lamenting is a process of turning toward him and leaning in toward him. And then another quote, to cry is human, but to lament is Christian. So anyone will cry when something is hard or is sorrowful, or you're going through a grieving process, but Christians do it differently. And so I just really loved this idea that we can look at these 4 steps in our prayer life to grow closer. And the first one is to turn to God in prayer. When we are going through these really hard times, it can pull us away, or we don't have the words and we don't know what to say and we don't know how to pray, and our heart is just so heavy and so burdened. But this, in parentheses, I did jot down these quotes when I was sitting at red lights or in parking lots. The 4 steps in lamenting. So the first one, we turn our heart to God in prayer, and we want to turn our heart toward Him and tell Him how we feel and what troubles us. And sometimes I think our prayers become um, rote, and just we say the same things over and over, and it's not always heartfelt. And so when we are in these situations, we just really need to be honest and let Him know how we feel. Um, and we're going to have, in a lament, you're going to have a complaint. And that is where you tell Him your need and what is really on your heart. And this author said that number 1, you need to be humble. And number 2, you need to be honest. And he said, it's not that Christians can't ask God why, but when we ask Him why, we don't need to do it with a clenched fist, but with a searching heart. And I love that quote. I want to hold on to what I want and then when it doesn't go that way, my fist is clenched and I'm ready to shake it. But instead of having that clenched fist, we should have open hands, ready to let go of whatever it is we want, and a searching heart. So when we ask God why, um, that should be the reason. Our heart's desire should be to learn and grow rather than to be angry. And then thirdly, we need to ask boldly. And so we need to appeal to God based upon the content of His character, His goodness and His love and His mercy and His grace. Ask in a way that affirms our faith. And so when we ask, thinking about what are those qualities of God that align with this request that I'm making. And then finally, we have to trust. So it's embrace the turn. And so you've prayed with this stature of, I'm looking at you, God. I'm complaining. This is my situation that I'm struggling with. This is what I want. And then the trust part, it's the but, and it confirms our faith, and it ends with trusting God. And that's where we rest in the grace and the promises He provides. So I thought those were 4 great steps. They're easy to remember. We don't want to turn away from God. We want to turn to Him. We want to air the complaint humbly and honestly. We want to ask, and then we want to trust. So let's look at a couple of the Psalms that are laments. And so Psalm 13 is one. David is accredited to writing this, and he's calling out, how long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? You can see there he's turning to God. He's the one he's asking. How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? So he's giving his complaint. He's struggling with enemies, and he's wrestling with his thoughts. He has sorrow in his heart. He's being honest. Look on me and answer. Lord my God, give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death. So he's requesting, he wants insight. Help me see. And my enemy will say, I've overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. But, and here's where he turns and he's trusting. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. And here he ends this prayer of lament, confirming his faith. And then Psalm 4. Again, David has written this. And he says, answer me when I call to you, my righteous God. Give me relief from my distress and have mercy on me and hear my prayer. So he's calling to God in prayer. He makes a request right there at the beginning. Give me relief. Have mercy on me. Hear me. How long will you people turn my glory into shame? How long will you love delusions and seek false gods? So he is complaining here. Know that the Lord has set apart his faithful servant for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. So again, he's confessing the truth. Tremble and do not sin. When you are on your bed, search your hearts and be silent. Offer the sacrifices of the righteous and trust in the Lord. Many, Lord, are asking, who will bring us prosperity? Let the light of your face shine upon us. So he's making these requests. Fill my heart with joy when their grain and new wine abound. You know, he's looking at other people's prosperity. They have grain and new wine, and it's plentiful. But he wants to be joyful when he sees that happening to other people. In peace I will lie down and sleep. For you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety. So here he's ending his lamenting prayer again with praise. He's trusting that the Lord will keep him safe and he can have peace as a result. So there are many laments in the Psalms. Psalms 10, 13, 22, and 77 are laments that would be really good for you to read through. I chose these two just because they're shorter than some of the others, but there are 40 plus laments in the book of Psalms. And some are individual and some are communal. So the individual have come from a perspective of one person, like the ones I just read, but a communal lament have the perspective of a group or a whole nation of people. And in the Psalms, there are individual and communal laments. There are individual and communal thanksgiving psalms, and then there are general praise psalms. So I thought that was interesting as you're reading through the Psalms to think about what type is it that you're reading. So our assignment this week is to put in our journal. I'm going to leave it up to you. You can either just write out a lament and break it into these different parts, or you can write out your own lament. And that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to use one of these examples, either Psalm 4 or Psalm 13. And I found this lady's blog. It's called Vintage Grace. And she has created a page like this of for many different psalms in the book of Psalms. So this first one is Psalm 4, and this one is hers that she wrote out. God, take my side. One, I think it's, I can't tell that first one. In a tight place, you gave me, once in a tight place, you gave me room. Now I'm in trouble again. Grace me, hear me. How long will you lust after lies? Will you lust after lies? Lust after lies. Live crazed by illusion. Would you just look at this? You got picked by Yahweh. He listens the split second I call to him. Complain, but don't lash out. Keep your mouth shut. Let your heart do the talking. Build your case before God and wait for his verdict. Why is everyone hungry for more? I have God's more than enough. More joy in one ordinary day than they get in all the shopping sprees. At day's end, I'm ready for sound sleep. You put my life back together. And so that is just I don't understand everything that she has written, but it applies to her situation. Um, and then over here on Psalm 13, it's not written as exactly the same way, but she's broken down the different parts and she's written about them. So God doesn't give us a look in his plan book to answer our questions. He gives us his presence. What would we really do with the answers to our questions? And you can see that she's broken it down. And I like the way she's separated these different chunks of, of thought with the doodles. You could also use washi tape to do that. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to try to do this Psalm 4 technique with the flowers, and I'm going to show you how I'm planning to work on those. Okay, so I tore out some magazine pages that have, like this was a salad, some type of a fruit salad or a garden salad, but it just looks like bright colors. And then I also tore out some text, but I just wanted that color. And so the plan is I want you to just cut out a squiggly circle and don't try to make this, exact. Like I'm not even going to draw it out. Just squiggle. And if it's not a perfect circle, it doesn't matter. So that gives you kind of the outline shape of a flower. And then just cut in toward the middle in little V shapes about 5 times. And this is going to give the petals. So there you can see I have part of a flower. And then I might take this pink section and do the same thing, only smaller. Then I can glue that on the center, and don't try to line it up perfectly. Let it be kind of messy. And then those little flowers are going to be on my pages. I think on one side, I'm going to do the lament the way she did. You can see here I drew some lines to divide out. I'm not going to go over those just yet until I write out my lament. But then I'm going to section it off and do some of the doodles, or I may use some of this washi tape to separate. And I'm going to, I tried doing a flower, drawing it out, but it didn't turn out as cute as when I did them just random. So I'm going to put a couple of flowers on the pages. Remember, odd numbers are visually appealing, so you probably want 3 or 5. You might do a smaller flower just to divide out your spaces. And I think on one page I'm going to do a lament, and on the other page I'm going to write out some of those quotes and maybe one of the either Psalm 4 or Psalm 13, whichever scripture I try to copy, the style and the format in the lament that I write. But my lament is really going to be about my week not being what I'd look forward to. And while that may seem silly, we all have disappointments. But it was a disappointment. It was a complaint. It was giving up, I guess, for someone else. And while I am thankful that I'm able to do that, it is still something that, I have to ask God to help me to do it with love and to do it with grace and mercy, and to help me love people the way he does. And so that's what my lament is going to be about. And while it will be, personal, I will still share it on our page this week. And if you all feel led to share yours, I'd love to see them.